Hey, what's up, guys? Here's an oldie but a goodie. I came across this while doing a search on the OOTP forums for a very specific subject that I wanted to find information about for reasons that you probably already know. Look at what this person says. This, by the way, is a post from about 12 years ago. I am trying to replay Dodger seasons from 1980 until the present day. These historical transactions and lineup options are new to me, and I think they might save the hours of effort moving players around that I endured after each season when I played about 5 seasons 2 years ago. I see the list of historical transactions and wonder if any of them can be overridden at any point, or are you locked in? For example, I don't want to have to trade Pedro Guerrero to St. Louis in August of 1988, but I do want the computer teams to have accurate rosters each season. In other words, I want to run the Dodgers myself. How does historical lineups work? I apologize if the answer for this is somewhere within the game, but I've not been able to find it and want to resolve this before I start playing games. Now, I want to stop here, right? This is not a very strange request, is it? This is a pretty normal request. A baseball fan says, you know, it'd be nice to replay this season, but I want to take this particular transaction out, or I want to take that one out. I want to see what happens if this guy stayed with this team instead of going on to this other team. I think I have a better idea of what we could do with that trade. Instead of doing this, maybe we could do something else. OOTP, you would think, would be an ideal game for a setting like this because you can have the computer GM make some other trade, or you can, I don't know, maybe like intervene and make certain things happen so that the trade and the rosters make sense at the end of the day, right? What's the response that we see from the OOTP community? Using real transactions, you will not be able to make trades. If you want to keep Pedro, you will have to do so in commissioner mode. Also, knowing that when using real lineups, every player is active and available. Yeah. So you don't use real lineups. That's a pretty easy solution. Here we go. This seems to be a recurring theme. People want real-life transactions, but not for their teams. It can't be done that way. If you don't complete a transaction that your team made in real life, then it affects other teams, and even affects future transactions that can't be made because your initial deal never took place. It's logically impossible for you to control your team's transactions, and yet have all the computer teams use their real transactions. Some of those deals involve your team. All right, time out. I want to know what you guys think about this, right? Is that logically impossible? In other words, if there are certain things that happen in real life, there's a trade that took place, and I say, no, I don't want to do that trade. Let's do something else instead. Does that completely destroy the concept of the sim? Is there no way to recover from this? Does this create some sort of chain reaction of events that then cannot take place in the future that cause the game to crash and burn? I mean, it's ridiculous. It is a ridiculous response to this question. And it's a question that is, I think, pretty natural because I face the same question myself, right? I find that using real lineups is not a realistic option. Correct. And here we go. It would still be nice to have a checkbox on the real transaction listing so you can uncheck, say, a handful of transactions you don't want to happen. Absolutely right. For example, I don't want Dodger icon Duke Snider to finish his career with the Giants, right? I want to see how the Dodgers' early to mid-'60s teams would have done if they didn't break things up, or if the early '80s Dodgers hadn't broke up the classic infield, or how the Red Sox would have done if they kept most of the 1975 players. And doing some of these trades would have immediate and down-the-road ramifications, but if I had that flexibility, I could deal with that. 100% true. And here's the response, and this is the one that kills me, and we're going to stop this here. Sure, and if Marcus, the programmer for OOTP, thinks something like this can be coded, maybe it will be considered. Right, that's kind of where my rage comes out, all right? So, look, I've played OOTP before. I know about the community. I've interacted with them. I still interact with the community, but stuff like this really makes me upset. It's not unreasonable for somebody interested in these simulations or somebody who likes replays to come up with a request like that. Why does OOTP not have a specific, like season-specific list of transactions? Why is it all dumped in some huge file that's really difficult to modify, or that you simply can't modify unless you know how to get in and do a couple of tricks? I mean, why is that the case? Why do you have to have commissioner mode on? Why do you have to go by hand and undo everything, right? Why does everything have to be automated for you? Right, the reason why I ask this is because none of the other baseball games are like this, right? If I play with Action PC Baseball, I can go in and I can change the transactions if I want to. With Diamond Mine Baseball, I can do the same thing. I can go in, I can get a list of the transactions, I can print them out, I can use them with a different game, I can modify them to my heart's content, I can do whatever I want with the season. I paid money for it, right? Why is OOTP like this? Why does it have to be so rigid? Why can't we think outside of the box? I mean, this isn't even thinking like completely outside of the box and coming up with, one of these time travel situations or whatever. We're just talking about how come we don't have a listing of transactions that you can then say, well, I want to delete this one. Oh, it influences something down the line, right? Because that player that you didn't get then can't be traded by your team or released or whatever happens in a year. Well, fine. Then have that transaction come up in like highlighted, yellow, and say you need to resolve this before you can proceed. We could do that. It would be really easy to program that. I can do that in Excel. I'm not kidding. If I have an Excel worksheet and I have a certain column with, dates, I can put on there and say, look, if this date's repeated, then highlight this and let me know so I can go fix it. And it works. It works really easily. You're telling me that a game like OOTP can't have functionality like that? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is my problem, right? This is not an unreasonable request. It's not unreasonable to want to be able to play with real-life transactions that you can modify. It's not unreasonable to want to have a realistic environment in which trades take place just as they did in real life, but you as the general manager of a specific team can make very specific decisions that might impact the way that it happens in real life. That's not like completely unheard of. This isn't one of those things like, well, I mean, if they could think of some fantastic, miraculous way we could program this or whatever. No. I mean, that's what we want. Now, I'll tell you something before we end this. I think I know the reason why OOTP doesn't use a season-specific transaction list. The reason why is this sort of like crazy, just sort of flinging out there, everything's all in one list approach. I believe the reason why OOTP does this is because it wants to hold continuity so you can stay from one season to the next, and so on and so forth. They don't want to have a single listing for a single season. Instead, it's got to all be one big story that's the long story of Major League Baseball, right? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I mean, you be the judge. You let me know what you think about this. But personally, I really hope that others in the future who might enter this space, people who might look into this and say, OOTP is a really inflexible game that has all sorts of weird things going on for reasons that most of its players don't care about. Maybe we could create, a new type of OOTP game that could improve on some of these issues. Maybe we could think a little bit outside the box and let people, have control over their own transactions and be able to easily control this, right? If somebody comes along and makes a competitor game, I'm talking about like a serious competitor, I want them to keep this in mind. I want whoever comes along, whoever says we have a new idea, we're going to do something different, keep this functionality in mind because there are a lot of people who would really like to have it. Not everybody's enamored with OOTP's trading mechanism, right? A lot of people who play the game frequently and who are on the forums will say that they have house rules, that there are certain trades you can't make because you're fleecing the computer manager. And that's even with these fancy hard trading modes and all this other stuff you can put in the latest version, right? So, I mean, there is a problem. There is an issue. This is something that really needs to be addressed. And as I said before, it makes me really, really upset when the answer from the community is something like, oh, that's preposterous, or nobody would have ever heard of such a thing, when the competition for this game right now, as far as I'm aware, every game has modifiable transaction files. So, I mean, I don't know. You let me know what you think. Talk to you later. Bye.